when an athlete is preparing for competition, there's a thing that they search for when it comes down to what they're looking for. They want to be like superheroes. That's the thing that athletes are going for. And the reason why I opened this up and showed you Dvin Haney in the midst of training camp, because we're going to show you what's happening over the course of the past 4 decades in the sport of boxing. There's been an oversight on how an athlete actually supposed to train, what does what, and how much of what should you do in order to become a supreme athlete that's not undertrained, but definitely is not overtrained. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some clips from some of the things that I see that I like, and some things that I see that will give you the actual science behind it so that you can judge what you should use and what you should keep your distance from whenever you're in a training camp of any sort for competition at a very high level. So what happens is we're going to break into that. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself for those of you who are new to the channel. Shame on you. Boy, you're late to the dance. My name is Eric A. Bradley, coach, that is. And we are going to give you the insight from our live to give you more of what an athlete should really be given during these times. And it's not rocket science, but before we go into that, I like to thank our sponsors, which pay the bills, keep the lights on, keep the cameras running. Jab Juice Consultants, giving the consultant IQ for the brand and the sport of combat, boxing, and businesses. So they understand exactly what direction they're trying to get into and go, and kind of lead those individuals to their highest good with understanding how to operate, build their brands using social media, and knowing exactly what moves to make in their career in order to get to their highest level. That's Jab Juice Consultants. You can reach them at jabjuice.com. Now, let's get to the topic at hand. I'm going to show you a couple of things that has happened over the past few generations in the sport. There was a true understanding of what could be implemented to the human body, but there are key factors that must be really brought to your light. And so with that being said, I want you guys to understand the key factors in conditioning by Eric A. Bradley. That's me, aka Coach. So when I was in the medical forums, I got to understand the body from a different point of view. And there are so many different layers to when you condition the body. So I'm going to give you some medical terms, and I'm going to also give you some terms from the world of sports performance so that you could really wrap your mind around it and not only just hear it from someone who's an expert in the field for 4 decades, but you can now take it and use that information to make better judgments. First, let me clarify the difference between one individual and another individual in camp. See, the responsibility of a trainer is to train the athlete, and the responsibility of the coach is to coach the fighter. Where we find a crossover, and we have to really create that line, is when the strength and conditioning coach trainer is trying to coach the fighter, and when the coach is trying to train the athlete. So you got to be careful about those lines. In camp, you need separation and division so that there is no confusion who plays what role. You'll find that a lot of times. Now, if you are a trainer, you're doing mid work, you're holding the body vest, you're working pads as far as the power pads, punch shields and things like that. He's working on technique. You got your technician, that person who's doing those things. The tactician is strategically planning the mapping out. And then you have your head coach who oversees a lot of the things that's going on and gives his thumbs up or gives his opinion. So we got to preface this thing and make sure that we don't get out of sorts when you're learning what roles go on in camp. For those of you who are in top trainer program, they understand that there's a place that they go learn all of the responsibilities that need to be in your camp. Because if you don't have the right people in camp, you can guarantee your camp will not run in a proper manner. You'll run into headaches and cross over, consistently stepping on one another's toes. When I was in the game, I had opportunities to have things like that happen, but when I came in only, once I came in, people realized you don't fit, you're moving out of my way. I'm an expert in this area and I bring value. And that's what you got to know, the difference between being in a role or being an expert in that role, and knowing where you are. Stay in your lane is the bottom line. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to show you the key factors in each one of these things. So when it comes down to conditioning, I'm an avid fan of
I know the rituals,
running.
same thing. Every
And
camp,
this
in
running,
Mount Charleston,
when I see this,
the elevation is hardest run of my life.
pros and cons, we're going to get into it. So the pros and cons of knowing what kind of workouts that you have to do in order to get yourself to optimal levels. Let me see. Now, pros and cons. Pros of knowing how to do certain particular workouts. Let's say weightlifting, which is coming up right here after I get done with this, builds muscle mass. Now keep these things right front and center. Take notes if you want to, because I'm going to pull this thing together and really clarify through equations so that you can make decisions in your camp. If you're the coach and you see your trainer doing something that does not give this cause and effect that you're looking for, this will give you the leg to stand on. Because I'm sorry, I don't really put a lot of weight in who is your trainer on your team. There's just more than a likely chance that they're not as experienced as I am in this field. And that's not throwing shade. That's just talking facts. 4 full decades. I came straight off of the medical side of things into this game and recruited by the highest sports teams in the freaking country, and only because of my expertise. And I was totally earning of and deserving of it because I put the work in. Because I believe if you really want to get to a higher level, you got to learn a lot more, and you got to learn a lot more than that once you get going. So this is never to throw shade. It's just that I've done it from the surgical table to the NFL to the sport of boxing to the training field on an entirely different level. So it's all about the experiences and the true knowledge, and really understanding and studying biology, physiology, anatomy, all of these different areas, kinesiology, studies and studies and studies. So that's what you'll be when you do all of those things. The kinematics of human motion is a real thing. So how do you apply that to what you're doing? So what we're going to do is show you that elevation, that running. What you see with the first training regimens that you saw is the ability to add conditioning. When you run an elevation, your red blood cells increase because the body lacks oxygen, because you are at height, you are above the clouds. There's not a lot of oxygen. There's very thin air. So your labor, if you've ever run in the mountains, you feel the laboring of your lungs, is because your body cannot encompass air, it cannot pull it in. The air is super thin. You're above sea level. Let's just say 5 to 9,000 feet. And that's a lot. And you are up there, and there is very little oxygen. So you find yourself deplenishing much faster. But what's happening is your red blood cells, which carry oxygen, are actually increasing because your body's a natural defense mechanism. And when the body is feeling something, attack it. like the lack thereof. Same way when you don't have food in your body has already created glycogen stores. And so your body starts to feed off of that. You got people in Ramadan having to fast all the time, 30 days. But no need to fret because the body's already reserved all of the nutrients that you need just in case. Our bodies are designed for the smoke. And this is what you got to think about when you're developing the body. Different areas that you'll start conditioning yourself in and for. Now we get to what we call the calisthenics. Now you know what the running will do, but we're going to go through the pros and cons of these things too, because not everything that you do actually benefits you only. So now you get into calisthenic training, which I love to see. And that fluidity allows you to develop. And that was in the first scene. And the first scene was pretty much basically, I love calisthenics and just a little slight resistance, right? That's great. And what that does is all about elasticity, but the body, you're going to really trip out where I bring this thing to when it comes down to understanding when is it time for what, and what exactly can you expect from each one of these things, because we're going to break it down. And I told you, that's what we do on this channel, and never be late to the dance. Now, how does this impact you when you're boxing?
Core body with, we did some neuromuscular, we did some neuromuscular primers with the jumping and the isometrics. Then we went into the heavy trap bar, working on our strength. We're doing contrast training, so we do a speed, a dynamic, or power, whatever you want to call it, exercise first, and we finish with a strength exercise. So that's what we're doing for the next 3 blocks. And then...
All right. So now that's what I was not a fan of. And the reason why I tell you this is because here's the deal. Here's what you're going to be dealing with there when it comes down to, let me pop my stuff up on the screen for you guys. Now, when you start building muscle and not understanding exactly how you should do it, first you saw the calisthenic training, which is I'm a humongous fan of, because I've learned through knowing the greatest minds in boxing as coaches. I learned the hard way, and I'll give you a quick story on that in a minute. But here are the actual repercussions of building up massive muscle. Here are the words that you got to be familiar with. Lactic acid, right? Number one, this is the acid that will bite your muscles like you have piranhas in your skin when you are pumping that body. The next is hyperemia. And that is what we call in the world of strength training, the pump. That's when your blood almost coagulates in one area and it traps all of that lactic acid. And it's like it's eating you away, and you can't even do another rep. You can't even hold your arms up. And I'm going to show you what other negatives that comes of this, because when you see individual boxing and this is starting to happen, you start to wonder what's going on with that fighter. But what happens is the oxygen is now being sucked through the red blood cells and into the muscle, opposed to it actually transferring through the body and keeping the body, let's say, satiated with oxygen, because you need oxygen in order to function. Your brain needs it in order to think clearly. But what's going on is you're going in reverse of what the human body actually needs to be going on. This is what you have to know. The blood is going, the oxygen's going all to the muscle tissue. You get it? The muscle tissue is sucking everything out of the stream like a greedy fat king. And what's going on is the body goes into dire straits. So that lactic acid is eating you away. And this is exactly what it looks like when it's taking over your body. Even if you're ahead in a match, I want you guys to take close look, because this is not my opinion. These are proven facts, and that's what we do. We get the medical data, and then we get the physical data, and then we put it on the table as the case. Here's the case. Quick things I have to say before you go. First of all, thanks for taking the time to watch us. Number two, if you found this information beneficial and you feel like information like this could truly move you along your path, then all of our replays could be found over in our Instagram subscription portal and over on our Facebook subscriptions. And number three, if your business has hit a wall and you like to have it looked at by a professional to see what moves will be beneficial for you, then make sure you put our name in a hat at jabjuice.com and schedule a call. And I'll see you tomorrow. So long.